Hello, my name is Damien from DKBrickStudios, and today we'll be doing another build talk video today. As you can kind of see by the pictures that'll be showing up, we are doing the Kaiju-Jeager Hybrid from Pacific Rim Uprising. So, we'll let that intro roll and we'll get started, shall we? Let's! Hope you guys are excited. I'm finally releasing this finally doing this. I'm doing the Kaiju-Jeager Hybrid. I hope you all are excited. I am not going to be sitting here and talking this entire episode. Actually, today I'll be letting the recording that I grabbed from AwesomeCon of the science of Pacific Rim be playing for us all, for you all to hear. It's a good panel. I would highly recommend listening to it. I enjoyed it. I was there to hear it. It was a fun panel to listen to. I would recommend listening to it and watch what's going on here. So yeah, you can see me build this Kaiju-Jeager Hybrid, which I think turned out beautifully in the end. And yeah. So, I'm going to be coming back at the end of this because I have more footage than audio. So, I'll probably talk a bit at the end of this. I hope you guys enjoy. And, I'll see y'all at the end of this. Enjoy the panel that I recorded from AwesomeCon, the science of Pacific Rim.
So here we go! Like they are stars, alright? So hand clap and cheer. Give it up for Robert Napton!
Alright. Welcome to the Science of Pacific Rim. I'm Robert Napton, head of comics at Legendary. Or as I like to say, the least qualified person to be on a science panel. I'm now going to bring up my esteemed panelists from Legendary, our SVP of Creative Strategy, Mr. Barnaby Lane. Up next, she has a PhD in astrophysics as a tech consultant in engineering and the entertainment industry, Dr. Erin McDonald. And our final panelist is Director of Mad Science at X, the Moonshot Factory, Dr. Rich Duvall.
Rich, you're rocking the kaiju look today. That's
absolutely.
It's quite a mane you've got.
Thank you. All right, so thank you for being here. This is going to be a really fun panel where we're going to talk about science fiction and science fact and where those two categories intersect. And we've decided to divide this panel into kind of three broad areas that I think will be of great interest to you. The first of which, we're going to talk a little bit about mechs, or mecha, or Jaegers, as we call them in Pacific Rim, which some people casually call giant robots, though they aren't giant robots.
People appreciating the mech specificity there. Nice.
Indeed. And so my first kind of question or ask for Barnaby is to talk a little about what is a Jaeger in the Pacific Rim definition.
Sure, and maybe for those of you who are looking, thinking, that's not John Boyega, maybe I'll just tell you a little bit about what it is that I do at Legendary and how I've been involved in the Pacific Rim movies, which is very relevant to this panel, and many of the movies that Legendary has produced. So my inner 12-year-old is very happy with what I get to do for a living. I get to work with Legendary's amazing stable of filmmakers and writers to really build out the universes that they create. And very often I get the chance to work with brilliant, mad scientific geniuses like these guys to try and bring as much scientific credibility to the worlds that we create as possible. Of course, while not compromising the awesomeness of giant mechs versus giant kaiju. but we try and bring as much credibility to that as possible. And actually, Robert, I just wanted to play a quick AV reel for you guys before we dive in, which I think does a good job of capturing the theme of what we're going to talk about over the next half an hour.
What is a Jaeger? A Jaeger is the pinnacle of human invention. When the monsters came, we did not wait for heroes to fall from the sky and save us. We saved ourselves. Innovation is our superpower. What is a Jaeger? It's you, times 1,000. Tall as a mountain, with a beating heart that burns as bright as the sun itself. Enabling us all to become the most heroic version of ourselves.
Join the Jaeger Uprising.
That's a Jaeger.
So, some of you may have seen that viral piece, we put that out last year, but we thought that really embodied a lot of what we're going to talk about here, which is this idea within Pacific Rim that science is our superpower, really. It's about, we are not waiting for a radioactive spider to bite us or for our billionaire parents to be gunned down in front of us. We're going to build ourselves into the heroes we need to be to save humanity. As I first said to Rich when we chatted on the phone, it feels like innovation is our superpower, should be on your business card.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, one of the wonderful things about Pacific Rim is that it brings together threads of, you know, kind of my childhood growing up with these like fantastic, you know, anime, you know, mecha, and of course Godzilla, and these threads that actually, yes, awesome.
Godzilla?
Godzilla. But let's not focus on Godzilla for the moment. Let's focus on the mecha, things like, you know, Gundam Wing. Let's focus on the fact that we're talking about amazing anthropomorphic machines that reflect us as human beings. And I think the wonderful thing about Pacific Rim particularly is it just doesn't reflect us in our form. It actually interfaces with our mind. And that may seem like artistic license. That may seem like just a really cool thing to do for film. But you know what? I think there's a damn good reason for that, right? Because if I'm going to join a machine to my mind, I want the form of that machine to reflect my structure, not in reality, but in my brain. There's this thing called the homunculus, which actually is in all of you, it's in your brain, which is the model that your brain has of your body. And if I want to control something just by thinking about it, just by moving, the perfect thing to control would be a gigantic anthropomorphic form that could immediately respond just like I expect my body to perform. And that's why this is so freaking cool.
Right on.
Yeah, no, that's like the many conversations we had as we developed the Jaegers on the first film. I had the great joy of working not just with Guillermo del Toro on the first film, but also with a whole range of scientific experts. And specifically, Robert, to your question about the Jaegers, we were very lucky to be able to involve Carnegie Mellon in the first film. And Carnegie Mellon, as Rich knows, has one of the leading robotics institutes in the entire world. And one of the great joys of my life is sitting down with these scientific experts who are literally building, you know, robotic snakes that can weave through rubble and find survivors after earthquakes. And I actually had a robot snake crawl up my leg while I was working on the project. And sit in the room with these guys and say, okay, we know the idea of a 250-foot super weapons, supermassive mecha machine is kind of hard to pull off. But work with us here. Let's see if we can kind of figure out what we would need to do. And one of the credibility things that we wanted to try and work out in the beginning was to have a good reason why these robots would be bipedal, why they would be human-like. With the question we always get, and it's a very reasonable question, is why build that when you could build just a giant bomb or a giant vehicle or something that flies or on wheels? You know, the robotics and the engineering challenges of managing that, and anyone who's seen, I'm sure, like me, I'm not the only one who's a fan of the videos that DARPA put out, the big dog robots that we've all seen, those creepy things that can run.
Nightmare fuel.
Nightmare fuel, that can balance themselves. And that's one of the most difficult things for robotics engineers to do, is to have a self-regulating, self-balancing thing that can move on legs rather than wheels or treads or all the other things that engineering has led us to design. And that was great feedback. That was one of the questions that the science team asked us, was why would you make it in the shape of a human? And that was really what led to the idea of the kaiju being toxic by nature. The idea that we wanted was that when you cause a kaiju to bleed, or you attack a kaiju with a nuclear missile or a remote warhead, that's going to create more damage than good. That creature is going to create a terrible toxic disaster zone wherever they're hit. So we needed machines that could go toe-to-toe with the kaiju and wrestle them away from population centers. Then, of course, because it's irresistible to have fun, we broke our own rules and built a bunch of missiles that our Jaegers can fire. So it doesn't all hold up, because at some point you've got to go with what's awesome. But that was the beginning of the idea for where the kaiju, being these toxic kaiju blue creatures, come from.
Well, my question is, and that's a great setting of the fantasy aspects that we were dealing with when we were creating the universe and the movies. So my question, point blank, for Aaron and Rich is, and what these people want to leave here with, is instructions on how to build a giant mech. So can we do it? Is it possible?
Everyone here gets their own Jaeger!
Yes!
You get a Jaeger, you get a Jaeger, and you get a Jaeger.
If we left here with the right amount of money, with the right amount of materials, could we build a giant mech-like?
Well, so one of the things that I actually love about Pacific Rim is the fact that there is an element of the scientific process that's brought into the storytelling, in the sense that when they first try to attempt making the Jaegers, it doesn't work, right? And so they have to then adapt and change and figure out how they're going to adapt the science to that and be able to bring the two minds together so they're not destroyed. And I think that's a nice illustration of not having everything work the first time, of just like, and we have giant robots, I mean mechs, sorry. And it's all taken care of, that there's a scientific process to that, which I really like.
Yes, and by the way, I think that absolutely, could we do it? Absolutely yes. And here's the thing.
This is why we invited Rich on the panel, guys. He actually thinks we can do this.
Exactly. Not only do I think we can do it, I would love to have a reason to do it. I don't have any kaiju attacking the planet right now, which is kind of a problem, because I can hardly think of a more fun project to tackle. But here's the thing. You know, our gigantic anthropomorphic mechs are really, really big, which makes it kind of a challenge, because we have to worry about, you know, the actuation force and the torque and the power to move all that around, but it also kind of makes things easy, because it means we've got a relatively big structure. It doesn't mean you have to optimize every single piece. So if I had to say, 18 to 24 months, Rich, could you build me an Iron Man suit? I'd be like, I don't know, the power density on that's really a problem. Most of that space is taken up by you, not by the suit, right? There's a lot of really, really hard problems. But if you said, okay, Rich, you've got 18 to 24 months and a budget of, I'll call it $200 million. Could you deliver me something like a Jaeger? I'd be like, I'll take that. I'll take that.
So the challenge is, we're going to do a science throwdown here. So challenge to you.
And we're going to Kickstarter this, by the way.
Oh yeah, this is happening. But the challenge is that
www.myjaeger.com. Click on donate.
This will happen. But the issue is, and I think it's really fascinating, when you try to just take a human, for example, and just make the human giant. Things in biology, and I'm not a biologist, I'm an astrophysicist. People are squishy, that's my opinion. But the bigger that they get, you start to have a lot of complications. And one of the coolest studies I remember learning that stuck in my mind as a scientist was when they realized how much the T-Rex actually would struggle running, being how big it is and how much mass is behind it. And so if you're going to make a person-shaped thing, really, really big, the bigger it gets, the more complications that you're adding onto it.
So Dr. Aaron, you're absolutely right. And I'll tell you what one of the major complications is going to be. So if we make it big, we solve one problem, which is how do we power the damn thing? Because at that point, we can actually put like a thermonuclear reactor or something like that, super, super high power inside the system, okay? That's great. The challenge becomes the thermal engineering. We have all these actuators, we have all these weapon systems, right? If we want this thing to keep functioning, we have to get the heat out. And one of the things I've noticed in looking at Pacific Rim is that there isn't a huge amount of surface area. So I think we're gonna have to work on active cooling as one of the biggest challenges to this, to make this whole thing work.
Well, it's funny to hear you say that, Rich, because that's exactly one of the things that came up in the development of the Jaegers. And again, another thing that many, even hardcore Pacific Rim fans might not know. If you look at the detailing on Jaegers, and if you pay close attention to the shots of the feet in the movies, you'll see inlets that run cabling and pipe systems all through the Jaeger. The idea was, and this is where it comes back to the oceanic nature of Jaegers, is that they would use seawater for cooling.
Yes. That makes a lot of
all
sense.
of the main Jaeger systems have a sort of a circulatory system that will channel seawater through their body while they navigate the ocean.
That's amazing. I did not realize that, and that actually is an incredibly good engineering idea.
I know.
Except for the corrosiveness of seawater.
The PPDC know what they're doing, guys. They got us covered.
That's awesome.
Well, we've touched on this a little already, but one of the questions is, and you mentioned this in your opening remarks, but why would you build something that's like a human, that's bipedal, that walks around, that could be tricked like the Imperial Walkers in Empire Strikes Back with the tow cable? Does it make sense that you would build something that had to move that way? If you're obviously battling a giant monster, maybe. But are there other reasons you wouldn't do wheels, you wouldn't do other things, as Barnaby talked about?
There is one other big reason, which is it looks awesome.
I'm happy to wade into this, but Dr. Aaron.
No, I think, well, there's been a lot of studies for psychologically too, as people start to build robotics that if you're going to have, people have heard of the uncanny valley in robotics, where you start to get robots that look so real, they look like demon, monster, creepy things, and trying to find that balance of having something that is relatable, that your brain can, anthropomorphize and go, okay, I understand that, even if it's giant, I kind of get how that works. That you can still empathize with it because there are humans running it, right? And so you look at it and you think, okay, that is still a human in there. And that's kind of how I interpret that. That the more mechanized you make it, the less you attach that to a human being.
And I think that on top of that, one of the amazing things about our sort of anthropomorphic bipedal form is that it's incredibly flexible. And so if I find myself in an environment, maybe I prefer to go and battle kaiju out in the middle of the ocean, but if I find myself in the middle of the city, right, perhaps because I've been tossed there by a giant kaiju, right, and I'm lying on my back and I look around and I see, oh, there's a skyscraper here, or there's, here's an entire steamship, I could pick that up and I could utilize that. So the ability for me as a human to utilize my environmental resources with maximum flexibility, if I can map that back to a human form, if I can use that human form, I can grab this thing and I can hit this thing, that actually makes a lot of sense to me.
Absolutely. And those were both thoughts that were going on while we fleshed out the Jaegers, and I think it was really interesting what you said there, Aaron. It was very important for us and everyone involved in the movie. The Jaegers, yes, they're going to be these extraordinarily powerful machines with these extraordinarily powerful weapons, and they're going to be very spectacular in terms of action. But each Jaeger also needs to stand as a symbol, as a beacon of hope to humanity. When a Jaeger is standing on the coastline watching the restless waters to see if a breach is going to happen, just the image of the Jaeger needs to bring hope to people and make them feel safe. So this idea that this is, again, innovation is our superpower, it is humanity building technology in their own image, but in the most heroic possible form, is not only what keeps us safe, it's what keeps us hopeful.
Absolutely, and one of the unique things about our Jaegers at Pacific Rim that the filmmakers and the storytellers came up with, which is different, I think, from a lot of the other iterations of giant mechs in anime, is the drift, and you touched on this, the whole idea that it takes two minds kind of linked together to pilot a device of this size and scale, and it introduces all kinds of interesting ideas about interfacing brains, implants, sharing memories.
I'm sure there are some drift-compatible people out there today. I can see some strong pilot teams out there.
Yeah, discuss. How soon can we link our minds to each other so I don't have to speak out loud and we could do a whole panel like this in silence?
Well, not that as a director of mad science I would have had any thoughts about linking brains together. Pardon me. Actually, I think that this is a tremendously powerful metaphor. Initially, when I saw Pacific Rim, I thought, oh, this is a silly plot device, right? And of course, I mean, in some sense, it is that. But at the same time, this notion of the foundation of who we are as humans is collaboration. That, I think, is incredibly deep. I mean, we are a social species. If you trace back our evolution, it's undeniable that the pressures that shaped us were the pressures of collaborating, as a team, and also, very closely as a pair, as a couple. There's absolutely no doubt this is a huge factor that's been driving our species and the shape of our brains. And in fact, I can argue that the reason we have the incredible linguistic skills that we have, and the reason that you and I have this ability to read each other's body language is precisely because we need this moment-by-moment synchronization in order to tackle the challenges around us. So I think this is actually a really kind of deep insight. And I would say that if you look at the evolution of communications technology, from initial, of course, speaking to writing, the Gutenberg press then being, printing, and then things like, radio, and then, of course, more recently, things like the internet and mobile. All of these have been tools that, if we use them correctly, allow us to synchronize more and more closely. At the same time, I think just like Jaegers give us tremendous power, I think these amazingly close communications tools also potentially create the possibilities for unintended consequences. So I'm hopeful that the future of the development of communications technologies, possibly as we look towards even like linking our brains, will bring us these positive things, and maybe we can also work out collectively, because we're working as a team, how we can minimize some of the downsides.
Well, too, and I think just from a sci-fi perspective, having insight into someone's mind in that intimate sense is terrifying, and is usually seen as a negative. You think of, not just the drift, but we see that in mind melds, right? And Star Trek is the same thing, taking on people's emotions, kind of feeling what other people are feeling. And no matter how much we put out there that people can figure out about us, what's in our brain is still unique to us. And that's a terrifying idea, to be able to share that with people. And Pacific Rim goes into that hive mind as well.
Very much so.
Fear.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I think perception around the first film, there were definitely some people who were like, oh, they're just putting that in there so they can create like an emotional relationship between the characters. But the honest truth behind the idea of the drift is it was initially inspired by a lot of things we were reading, in particular an article that appeared in The Guardian in 2012, which was about the increasing convergence between neuroscience and military. And a lot of neuroscientists at the forefront of the field believing that the soldiers of the future, their most powerful weapon will be their mind, not their body. And there are many sort of prototype programs that have been experimented with over the years in terms of enabling soldiers to control weapon systems with their minds or control vehicles with their minds. And this idea of a soldier who can operate at the speed of thought was something that was very inspiring in the beginning. And then, exactly as Rich said, once we had that idea, it was really about coming back to this theme of we are stronger together than we are individually. And I think we've always felt that it's a good time in the world for stories that celebrate unity, diversity, and people coming together to be more than themselves. And that was really what led to this idea of two pilots, or three pilots in some cases, coming together, fusing their consciousness. But I agree, Aaron, there is something so terrifying about letting someone else into their mind. No one wants to go into my brain.
Know what you know in mind.
There are some things I would not want anyone in this room to see. Some of them I'm thinking about right now.
But I think the awesome thing about the drift, as you have conceptualized it, is it's really a relationship. And what I mean by that is the individual pilots, the individuals going into that, still retain their identity. And they have to work hard both to retain their identity and to join with each other. Versus, say, I don't know, the Borg, this kind of collective intelligence that subsumes everybody. And I think inherently, at least, I feel a terror of the Borg, a terror of this kind of collective, faceless intelligence. And that goes back to, we can trace that back to things like A Wrinkle in Time and, much earlier science fiction. But I really love this notion that we are intentionally joining together, working hard, each bringing ourselves as separate individuals, but collaborating intensely on something where we get really, really good at.
And retaining our individuality.
And retaining our individuality. So when you see like two partners who do partners dance really well, it's not that you lose the sense of them as individuals, you see incredibly how well they work together. And that's what I love about the drift.
Well, before we leave the topic of Jaegers, we must touch on the just fun aspect of giant mechs, which is giant mechs equal giant weapons. And I have a cheat sheet here to mention some of the weapons with our Jaegers. For example, Gypsy Avenger has the gravity sling.
That's right.
Bracer Phoenix has the quad-mounted Vortex railgun, which I need.
Also correct.
Guardian Bravo has an arc whip. So how did these amazing weapons come to be, and the naming of these? And I'm just touching on a few. There's a long list I have in front of me.
Well, I mean, first of all, obviously, I've got to give all the credit to our great director, Stephen S. DeKnight, who made Pacific Rim Uprising and really brought a wonderfully boyish sense of mecha love to this property. And I think I came up with ideas for weapon systems that really moved the Jaeger fleet forward in some very, very exciting ways. As it pertains to sort of the scientific inspiration for some of those weapons, and obviously this is where we're really entering the realm of the science of the awesome. It's really about, do you want a giant spiked death hammer that you can slam a kaiju in the face, or do you not? Don't talk to me about the reality of it. Just mount the weapon and punch that thing in the face. But I will say, one of the things that we looked into throughout Pacific Rim, I think you can probably see that there are a lot of influences from World War II culture in Pacific Rim, albeit given a very futuristic twist. And you see that particularly in the first film that Guillermo did with some of the art and the decals that are on the Jaegers, which were very inspired by World War II nose art. But the one thing we did look into, I remember right at the beginning talking to Guillermo on this movie, and we all said to each other, we would like to finally have a good reason for putting lasers in a sci-fi movie. Lasers are always there because they look cool, they're bright, they glow, they fire, and they make a really cool noise. But if you talk to anyone in the military realms, lasers still make no sense as a military option. There's a lot of research going on into particle beam weapons and focused energy streams, but they still don't have the ballistic power that makes it a viable military opportunity. So again, we brought it back to the toxicity of the kaiju and how unusual they are as an enemy. The plasma caster, as we call it, which got upgraded in Pacific Rim Uprising, which is our name for the energy weapons, is really designed to not just wound the kaiju, but also cauterize the kaiju, to seal off toxic bleeds. And that for us was an authentic enough idea that it would drive the governments and the military systems of the world to actually put all of their investment into energy weapons and plasma weapons, which allowed us to get our pew-pew moments in the movie.
What do you guys think? Lasers?
Yeah, I mean, most people when they think lasers, like the pew-pew, is usually what people are thinking are plasma blasters more than lasers. And that's purely because lasers are light. And so they travel at the speed of light, so you can't see it, right? It just kind of goes. At least you can't see it with our eyes. And so most people are thinking of plasma being fired out at that, a more sensible speed, which absolutely, I mean, for those of you who might not be familiar, we kind of done the different states of matter. We have solid, liquid, gas, and then plasma, and it's just super hot ionized gas. It's just really hot, and in terms of cauterizing, yeah, that will cauterize it super fast.
Yes, and that bridges us to railguns, because railguns are really, really freaking cool. And a railgun in some ways bridges this notion between kind of a plasma weapon and a ballistic weapon. Because for those of you who may not be familiar, if I take two long, straight conductive rails, and I put something conductive, like a little piece of copper across one end of that, and I have a massive freaking capacitor or other source of a tremendous electrical current, and I put it across, sort of, right towards joining those two rails at the end. This creates a loop of current. And because the universe wants to minimize energy, that loop of current wants to expand. And so it accelerates that little piece of copper down those rails incredibly, incredibly fast. But not only is it accelerating it down those rails, it's also basically turning it into plasma. And so those weapons actually straddle that difference. I end up with a ballistic projectile with basically the mass of my original, say, chunk of copper. And it's also moving at maybe 10 kilometers per second, right? And so that gives you potentially like the cauterizing, high energy, high temperature, but it also gives you the punch of a ballistic slug. Not that I'm into railguns or anything. But yes, so railguns are really cool. It turns out it's actually quite hard to switch that amount of electrical power. And the Navy invested a whole lot in developing railguns for a while. And what they found was that actually that switching problem is one of the issues. But presumably, future technology, who knows? Maybe we can solve those problems. I mean, if we were attacked by kaiju, we kind of have to, right?
You have to be motivated somehow.
The last thing I'd say on the weapons, and this isn't scientific, it's just fun. When we first started working with Stephen on the movie, Stephen's a big gamer, very, very interested in gamer culture. And obviously there's been some wonderful imaginative weapons that have come through in the gaming space. Stephen said very early on that he wanted every Jaeger to have a Y button, to have kind of a special move that when you activated that, it would give you just something really cool to play with, whether it's the gravity sling that can kind of suck up anything in the world and turn it into a projectile, or my personal favorite, the arc whip, which is like a cross between a lightsaber and a whip. How did no one do that before? That's really fun. So I've got to give it up to Stephen. He did a good job of not letting the science get in the way of the awesomeness.
Well, we needed weapons because we're battling giant monsters, and in Pacific Rim, kaiju, or the giant creatures, are the big bad and the main thing that we have to deal with. And obviously in Japanese entertainment, there's a long history, starting with Godzilla, of these sort of giant creatures.
Godzilla, who's that?
Yes. And not to go too deep, but these have always been seen as sort of a metaphor for science run amok, and by tinkering with things, we might unleash our own Frankenstein's monster. And I think Pacific Rim fairly is playing in that same idea, with even categorizing the kaiju as almost the way you would categorize natural disasters or storms.
Very much so, yeah. I mean, we had a phrase that we talk about a lot at Legendary. We've done a couple of monster movies here and there. And, one of the things we talk about a lot that is, at their best, monsters really embody the fears of the age. They're these giant walking allegories for whatever it is that we're afraid of. And that's certainly something that we wanted to bring into Pacific Rim as well. You'll notice that the Jaegers are defined in marks of technology, Mark 1, Mark 2, and so on. But the kaijus are categorized in the same way that tornadoes or natural disasters are categorized. And that was very much intentional. The process of working on Pacific Rim and the monsters for Pacific Rim was very different to the process in working on Godzilla and the Monsterverse films, where really those monsters are linked obviously to Japanese culture, but also to folklore and symbolism and the cultural history of those parts of the world. With the kaiju, they're very, very unique because they are not really living creatures. They are bioengineered. These are genetically engineered living weapons. Legendary, we call them monsters of mass destruction, and that's exactly what they're designed to be. And what's cool about the idea that Guillermo had originally was that each one could be its own species. So we knew when we started on developing the kaiju that we really wanted to involve zoologists from the beginning and try and take as far as we could, a zoologically credible approach to giant monsters. So just as we worked with Carnegie Mellon and the robotics experts there, we worked with many of the PhD zoologists at the San Diego Zoo and many of the researchers there, and I got to sit in rooms with people far smarter than I and ask them about kaiju poop and what it would smell like and what the consistency would be. And my mother's very proud of me. So, you know, from the very beginning, and I think it's one of the genius things that the amazing Guillermo del Toro brought to the table was this idea of a movie where, normally in the movie when the monsters die, no one asks, well, what happened afterwards? But this is a movie in which we can see, you know, when a giant monster dies, we build a cathedral out of one of its skulls, and a religious sect starts worshipping the kaiju as if they're angels. Or Hannibal Chow and the Black Market move in and start harvesting male potency drugs from their bone powder. So we really wanted to get really into the biological reality of these creatures, as well as sort of the cultural impact of what they would have on the world.
Guys, and yeah, I mean, you know better than I what's happening with genetics, with cloning. So, will we make our own monsters? Is there a truth behind this fictional idea?
Creatures are squishy, so I'm going to hand that over to the mad scientist.
Well, first of all, I love the symbolism of the kaiju. I mean, it is this direct line back to Godzilla, and direct line back to kind of the monster mythos that sort of inform our folklore and our legends going all the way back. And these monsters have always embodied the things that we both most desire and most fear. And I think the kaiju are worthy representatives of that. And in the first Pacific Rim movie, you know, one of the characters talks about the fact that the reason they're back is that we've now terraformed the planet for them. That with all of our industrial activities, in some sense, we invited them back. I think it's
love that element, by the way.
And I think it's like, you know, Godzilla was summoned by the atomic age, right? You know, in some sense, King Kong was the result of imperialism, you know, going out and trying to bring something back that we couldn't control. So I think the monsters have always symbolized our hopes and our fears, power and destruction, you know, the great potential and the great unknown. But in terms of these actual biological weapons, you know, like today, people are working on synthetic robots that actually incorporate living tissue, non-living tissue potentially, and other control systems to make things that you know, on a tiny, tiny scale in the lab, you could see as kind of being prototypes the kaiju. And imagine that my superpower isn't so much, you know, titanium and steel and control systems and nuclear power. Imagine that my superpower, now I'm one of the aliens, is biology, right? That's the medium in which I express myself. If I was saying, I'm going to open a rift into an unknown world, and I want to send through the most capable things to conquer that world, I probably wouldn't choose just one design if I could. I'd have several. And I would probably want to give them a range of capabilities. At the same time, I'd want to have common building blocks. As mentioned, the kaiju have the same DNA, which isn't crazy because with epigenetics, we can actually turn on and turn off different capabilities. We can make these modular biological robots that go through and do basically what they're programmed to do. And I think they're kind of a wonderful metaphor, a wonderful lineage, and also not an entirely implausible thing to create, assuming that we had some reason to create gigantic, destructive, amazing, highly toxic creatures.
You really want the kaiju to show up, don't you?
Kaiju are freaking awesome! I mean, it would be terrible if they showed up, but I certainly hope they don't show up anytime soon. That would be really bad.
And I also think, you know, the kaiju are a reflection of sort of the inherent experimentalism we see in science as well. You know, something that was very much at the forefront of our minds was an image I think we were all disturbed by, which was that human ear grafted onto that mouse. That weird image that came to symbolize the sort of phantasmagorical impact of playing with DNA.
And this is a hard thing being a scientist who's also in love with science fiction, is sometimes science fiction can instill fear in people of science. And so you always have to tread that fine line, and one of the things I like is that you counter the genetic engineering fear that could be implemented by saying, oh no, we're going to out-science them. Like, we're not going to run away from science. We're going to get around it with more science, which I really like.
Well, that's actually a lovely way of, I think, summing up the conflict at the heart of Pacific Rim, and if I had to reduce down Pacific Rim to one single idea that we have built the franchise around, it's probably this, which is that Pacific Rim is about innovation versus evolution, those two areas that we just spoke about. It is about a godlike interdimensional race of malevolent beings, engineering, bioengineering creatures, using evolution in a weaponized way to send organic creatures through into our world, that we, the humans, have to use scientific innovation and engineering to counterattack. And it's all about the one-upmanship between those two sides. As a new species of monster with a new power or a new force that we can't deal with comes through, that forces us to use science and human innovation to figure out, all right, how can we become the monster again? How can we win this conflict?
And, you know, I think that's a wonderful sort of summation of the movie. There's something actually really deep and I think kind of terrifying behind all of this. Who here has heard of the Drake equation? Some of you. Yeah, the Fermi Paradox, which is another way to say the same thing. That's right.
Fermi Paradox.
Fermi Paradox.
Fermi Paradox will make you lose sleep at night.
So here's the thing. You can do the math. You can all do the math. There are an uncountable number of galaxies, let alone stars, right? Some of those stars, in fact, we know many of them have planets. Some of those planets are in the habitable zone. Some of these are main sequence stars. It's kind of crazy, this notion that we haven't seen evidence of other life out there. And the more you think about this, the scarier this becomes. Because the fact that you and I and all of us are sitting here is an existence proof, right? If this has happened here, it's happened elsewhere. Why haven't they checked in? Why haven't we received their I Love Lucy transmissions? Right? No, seriously. Like, this is a really damn good question. And Pacific Rim may be fanciful, it may be you know, a feel-good movie, but the deeper question is, why haven't we heard from anybody? And could there be something like the kaiju out there that whenever they hear a peep, or even maybe anticipate the arrival of a new advanced civilization, they do something to stop it? And that may sound like science fiction, but no one has explained this to anybody's satisfaction yet.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that a little bit, there's things like gamma ray bursts they think could be one solution to the Fermi Paradox. That a gamma ray burst is the idea that you live in a 100-year floodplain, right? And that whatever 100-year flood will come and wipe you out. That's the same idea, and it's going to take you 200 years to develop the technology to be able to communicate with someone else. Well, that 100-year flood is still going to come by, and so that's kind of a similar solution to the Fermi Paradox. But sci-fi handles this all the time, that you have monsters that come up and just fight humanity and try to destroy it. I mean, you get the Reapers that show up every few, 100,000 years, whatever it was, yeah. So anyway, it's kind of a cool thought.
I'm sure that's all fine. The world seems to be going in a really good direction.
Oh, yeah, we'll be fine. Oh, we're fine.
Well, my theory is they've come, they've looked, and they've run.
Well, it's entirely possible that we are, in fact, the baddest of the bad right now, but I don't think that's going to last forever. But I also hope that we can be the goodest of the good, which is to say that I think that if somehow we have survived whatever that kind of that threshold or that barrier that has stopped others in the universe, that maybe we can actually use this to eventually to help other species and other races and other creatures. And actually, let's start right here at home. Let's actually be good at home. Because I think the universe is a scary place, and just like in the Drift, we need partners. I hope that we can extend that notion and create collaborations and partners with each other here in this room, and more widely, and then maybe.
I think we're all Drift compatible.
Yes.
I think we're a tribe right here.
Well, before we run out of time, I want to touch on one more broad topic that I know is near and dear to your heart, and it kind of alludes to what we've been talking about, which is the multiverse, other dimensions. So when the monsters come, we can escape to a parallel reality where they don't exist, correct?
Oh yeah, parallel multiverse is totally on it.
Obviously, in Pacific Rim, they come through a breach in the ocean, and that's kind of our cool device to explain where they come from, how they get here, etc.
And yeah, real quick, there is actually a multiverse theory that this made me think of called the dripping black hole theory, if any of you may have heard of it. But it's the idea that you have supermassive, there are black holes all over from stars that have died. They merge. We think that over time they just get more and more massive, and then at the center of galaxies we find these supermassive black holes. And the theory, and this is theory, is that the black holes will get so massive, they basically rip a hole and start a universe in another dimension. And so you have this like mothership, right? So you have this black hole in one universe.
I should be getting this down. Is anyone got a pen?
that has then started, that's the Big Bang, is when it reaches that critical mass in another universe, and then the matter that's falling into that black hole in your mother universe is what's causing dark energy to push that child's universe apart. And then that child universe will then have a black hole that reaches a critical mass that starts a new universe. So you can think that's the dripping black hole theory, is that they're all the way down. Now, could you travel into these other universes? Well, there's something that happens when you try to enter a black hole called spaghettification, and that's a little terrifying. So as possible as it would be to travel through a black hole or a portal to another dimension in another universe, you've got to get over the spaghettifying.
Got to get past the spaghetti.
But that was there. I mean, tidal forces in black holes are, of course, what rips you apart in spaghetti. But if I had a large enough black hole, if that event horizon had a low enough curvature, is it possible that tidal forces would not necessarily tear me apart, especially if that were a rotating black hole? If it were a rotating black hole that was dragging space-time around.
So if it's a rotating black hole, then it's more possible. Now, a super large black hole, you still have that problem, because the event horizon might be larger, but the idea is you have escape velocity to crawl out, and it's basically the steepness of your black hole. And your escape velocity, once it gets greater than the speed of light, you can't do it. The gravity's too strong. But if you have a rotating black hole, then all the rules change. And you cry a little, and then you think about leaving graduate school, and then, yeah.
Awesome. I'll keep that in mind.
Wow. Well, I don't know if we're quite at time yet. I'm looking for help. There's a ticking clock here you can't see, which has been making me very anxious.
It looks
this whole
scary.
panel.
I think we're out of time.
Can we do a couple questions? Okay, cool. Does anyone have questions for this amazing panel?
There was a hand that
I think
shot
I
up
have a
right
microphone out there somewhere.
No.
The lady in front is leading you to the microphone, which is over here.
All right, we'll start.
And then before we end the panel, we have a little something special to show you. So I will cut the questions off to leave time for that.
You gotta go to the next.
Okay.
Yes.
Besides, it looks awesome. Why are all the Jaegers different when you could just mass manufacture them?
That's a really good question. I think it comes back again to the idea that they are designed to be more than just defense weapons. They're designed to be symbols of hope. They're designed to be something that can make an 11-year-old boy feel braver just by looking at it. So part of it is about building a stylized look that can feel and look monolithic and heroic, not just powerful. And then the other aspect of the design is that, particularly in the first film, less so in Pacific Rim Uprising, when the PPDC have become a unified global force, the Jaegers also reflect the personality of the pilots and some of the cultural identity of the country that produced that Jaeger.
If we were to make Jaegers now, we'd probably use mass customization, not mass manufacturing. So of necessity, basically to optimize them, they would all come out different.
Awesome. Why don't we take a question from this side? We have 2 lines.
So, how do those helicopters move the Jaegers?
Very carefully.
Listen, science can't help with everything. No, there is there's a prototype anti-grav fuel in the V-22s, which gives them a bigger VTOL drift than your average jump ball, that allows them to lift the thing up.
I approve.
Wrap me up here, Rich, wrap me up.
Absolutely, and actually,
it's a very good question.
You kind of got us there.
Before we added the rocket boosters in Pacific Rim Uprising, so we could pilot them direct in.
If we could make the air effectively a lot more massive, or basically allow our rotor blades to spin much faster without having the high Mach number of problems with the rotor tips, then maybe we could do it. But yeah, you kind of got us there.
We need you in our next writers' room.
From this side.
So,
me and my friend Sir Isaac Newton have a real big problem with the gravity mass, displacement with these. Yeah. So, and when we're talking about these large, massive, walking plant defense mechanisms that we have here, how do you guys, compensate for that? Because, like you were talking.
Well, these guys can answer better than that. I mean, I do think clearly some of the biggest liberties that Pacific Rim is taking is with physics and gravity. And I don't just say that flippantly. The problem is this, when we worked with the robotics teams and we really looked at body mass ratios, gravity, ultimately you're going to end up with some pretty boring looking giant robots. They're going to be moving so slowly, these sort of septuagenarian robots sort of shuffling through the space. But that said, we did try and balance it. We also didn't want the Jaegers to look obviously too light or too fast or too mobile. So it's always that balance, getting it at a point where it doesn't feel like it takes you out of the movie in terms of the laws that it's breaking, but also allows us to have Saber Athena doing a twin plasma blade backflip off the back of the
I mean, just to go into the physics a little bit of that the challenges are basically comes down to inertia and momentum, that you have mass and you have speed, and the combination of those, the bigger you are, doesn't take much velocity to start being hard to stop. And, but you got little anti-gravity techno thingies that are fine.
Or potentially, we're looking at new classes of materials. By structuring things really at the nanoscale, we can make materials that are much, much stronger than the strongest things we have today, much stronger than titanium or other alloys, but are vastly lighter. So if I can take 90% or more of the mass out of a titanium structural element and retain all of its strength, it's not crazy. It will be a challenge, but it's not crazy. We could build something that's very, very big, but actually weighs a lot less than it looks. Now, that would make it more vulnerable to be knocked back by Kaiju, which we kind of see in the movies, but would also increase the agility and make it possible to respond a lot faster.
Last question, then we want to show you something really fast, and we have to call the panel.
Not science related, but what is your favorite mech, or mech that inspired you the most?
It's like picking my children.
I've got to be curious and go with the Mobile Suit Gundam.
I've got to pick one from Pacific Rim. I would say Cherno Alpha from the first one.
I feel like there are too many awesome things. So many from Gundam Wing. I think that when I was young, too young to actually even know what anime was, I saw a movie that involved, and I don't even know what it was today, but it involved mecha. And I wish I knew what it was. It was not a great movie. It was something low res and poorly done. But it was that image, I think that largely, in many ways, set me on the path that I am today, was thinking about that, thinking about all the problems. So I'm just going to say that I just love the whole genre. It's been so inspiring. It's contained so many problems, and it's so heroic. It symbolizes, as you say, humanity at our best when it's presented the right way.
Well, and so the one that comes to my mind is kind of a little bit of a cop-out, but when you said what you thought of as a child, these AT-ATs, man, they were awesome. Coming over the horizon.
Yes, absolutely.
And that just stuck in my mind as, how are you going to take that down? Oh, that's how you're going to take it down. Awesome. So, yeah.
That's where I think you started, Robert. It's all come around.
It's called, you can still trip them now.
That's true.
All right, we're going to end with a quick and special presentation because we are over. I will hand it to my colleague, Barnaby Lee.
So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. I enjoyed listening to it when I was there in August, yeah. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a fun panel to be at. I wish I could have been there more, but it could have been at AwesomeCon more. But hey, you know what? It was awesome. Y'all got to hear some great stuff. I was actually going to try asking a question, but they didn't have time for me, apparently. I was going to ask if we were going to ever see Godzilla go up against a Jaeger, which I would love to see. I would love to see that. You don't even know how much I would love to see that. Yeah, that would be awesome to see. So, yeah, I'm just gonna kind of talk a bit about this model a bit. I think I kind of really like what I did here. I really like the whole design that I did for him. I tried to make it as accurate as possible. And yet giving the design of the Jaeger that I had, plus trying to show that it was a kaiju, which I think I pulled off really well. I like the design; it's pretty good. Um, I will say this, you can kind of see me messing up a bit because I am using a whole new program. As of this recording, which is on the 6th of October, yeah, the 6th of October, Stud.io got upgraded, which I had to get new to. They had a whole new program, Stud.io 2.0. I was using that new version because I wanted to get accustomed to it. I was wanting to get to know it. I figured I would record this. So yeah. You'll be seeing this more and more in my tutorials. I've mentioned this in my plan for November and all that video, how this is a different thing. So yeah, yeah. As you can see right now, I'm adding the spikes on the back of the Jaeger Kaiju Hybrid thing. So yeah, that's it looks cool with those on, trust me. Yeah. This thing does have an impressive look, I'm not gonna lie. I would have added the beam for him, but I really wish this thing had like a weapon of some sort. The one thing that was puzzling me, and this will explain one part of it, I was having trouble trying to figure out how the hell am I gonna build the claw. I would have actually sat there and built the claw, but I didn't know how to do it. So I did my best. I sat there and figured it out, fought out of for a bit, and then I just figured, screw it, let's just do a cupped hand. I might go back and build it, depending on when it is. I mean, this was built and recorded on October 6th, so, you know, I've got time to modify things before it actually is time for me to build the tutorial. And, yeah, also, as you may have noticed, I have been, while I was working on this, I was listening to stuff from Venom, this Venom soundtrack, which I thought the movie was good. I talked about this in my, the Plan for November video about the movie, but, yeah, I kind of wanted to talk about that because, I kind of wanted to say I liked it. So, yeah, it was a fun movie, it was good, and, yeah. This thing, it looks impressive, I'm not gonna lie. I like how it came out. I'm gonna let you guys know this here. I'm going to be going back one day and modifying all my Jaegers with a new body design, and maybe a new design for the legs with the hips, and I'm gonna modify all of them. I'm gonna do an upgrade video for you all so you can be able to upgrade all my Jaegers. So yeah. That's gonna be cool, wouldn't it be? Won't it? I mean, I'm excited to do that for you guys. I'm sure you guys will be excited for that. Because, I mean, of course I'm using the standard Jaeger body design I have right now. I can't wait for this to be shown to you guys. Like, legit, I can't wait for it to be. You know, it looks nice, trust me. I really like how it came out. And, yeah, I mean... Hey, well, there's some more stuff that's going to be coming out. I mean, soon we'll be doing Bumblebee, from the movie Bumblebee. Get hyped for that, folks. What might happen with those is we're going to do a double upload. A double video per Build Talk. Yeah, I can't wait for that. That will be dope. So, yeah. Yeah, I'm getting the spikes in place right now, as you can see. Those look really nice. On there, I kind of went with two of the medium azure, I believe, for the coloring of the spikes, so that way you can be able to have the design of the spikes, so that the spikes actually kind of look like they're kaiju-esque. I kind of try to make this thing look kaiju-esque, yet have the Kaiju-Jeager look like it is one, you know. Gotta kind of give it the look that it needs to look like. Yeah. I'm trying to think of anything else to say here, but, you know. Yeah, I'm just going for, like, the instructions, seeing how this all looks, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm trying to narrow down where I'm going to be able to put the, spikes, because I want to move those after the head. I feel like the head should have them after. The head should be, like, the last thing you add. That should be the last thing you add on my model. So, yeah, that's honestly what I feel, but, hey, that's my opinion, you know. Do what you want to do with it. I mean, hey. So the Thor will be coming out soon. I mean, it's gonna be good. So yeah. Yeah, and you may have noticed throughout the building of this, I went to a couple of my Jaegers because I wanted to be sure I knew what I was doing. It's been a while since I built these kinds of models. Yeah, now as you can see, I'm looking at this thing from top to bottom with Jaeger parts. Yeah. Well, not the Jaeger parts, but like the entire steps because I want to get a look at that. So yeah, that's pretty cool. I'm not gonna lie. This is a really nice model. I'm not gonna lie. I like it. It's good. Well, looks like we gotta start wrapping things up here. So yeah, that's pretty much it, folks. This is Damien from DKBrickStudios signing off. Please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Sharing the video would be greatly appreciated. Yeah, please remember to check out my socials. Links to those are always in the description below, along with my friend's novel Rise, who you could be hearing in this video as well from time to time. And yeah, I think I should be signing off now. This is Damien from DKBrickStudios signing off. May the Force and the Force of others be with you always. I hope you all enjoyed this Bill Talks video. I'll see you all in the next video.
Trust in your feelings and find a new hope. Take your best shot and let go.